The Dallas Stars lost in a shootout on Monday night at home against the Colorado Avalanche. And on today's episode, we go inside the Stars locker room to get post-game sound bites from Jake Oettinger, Jason Robertson, and Miro Heiskanen. We'll talk about Jason Robertson's continued heroics and why he is undoubtedly the best player in the NHL right now. We'll talk about the penalties that continue to impale and cause the Stars to struggle. And then, of course, we'll talk about the Central Division and how the race for the top spot is heating up on today's episode of Locked On Stars.
Your Locked On Stars, your daily podcast on the Dallas Stars. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, Stars fans. Welcome back to the Locked On Stars podcast, the only daily podcast covering the Dallas Stars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Dane Lewis, your local expert on all things Dallas Stars hockey, coming to you on Tuesday, November 22nd. And whether it's your first time here or you are a recurring listener, thank you for stopping by and making Locked On Stars your first listen of the day. If you're watching on YouTube, please do hit that subscribe button. And if you're listening on audio only, subscribe to us on your favorite podcasting platform. We are free and available no matter where or how you may choose to listen. You can also find us on social media at Locked On Stars on both Twitter and Instagram, as well as my personal Twitter account at Dane_Lewis. But without any further hesitation, let's jump into today's episode, where it's not a completely full-on sad episode, but not as happy as it could have been if the Stars were able to get some other things to roll their way in last night's contest. The Stars and the Avalanche went head-to-head for the first time this season, and this truly did feel like we were watching the two best teams in the Central Division. It, to me, at least, gave off a kind of a playoff vibe. It was a sellout crowd at the American Airlines Center. Way more Avalanche fans there than I thought there would be, and way more there than I would have liked to have seen there. But the Stars fans also showed up in full force, and when the moment was big, they were loud and ready to go. And I mean, it just had a playoff atmosphere, and it certainly felt like the biggest players on each team were the focal point of this matchup, including the Dallas Stars' very own Jason Robertson, who came up big twice for his team. And the first goal, I'm gonna keep it real with each and every one of you. I'm gonna be completely honest. I don't necessarily know how that was a goal. I watched the replay just as many times as you did, and I'm sure the officials got it right, and maybe they just saw things different than me. I would not have been able to make a clear call in that moment. I mean, that's why the referees and those at the league office looking over that get paid to do what they do. It was a weird situation. I'm obviously very glad that it counted in favor of the Stars, and I think even Jason Robertson, he actually did say after the game that even he really didn't know, and you could see even after they called it a good goal, he was laughing and smiling a little bit over on the bench. A very chaotic sequence, but a much-needed goal for the Stars. But then, of course, his goal later in the game, perhaps even more important and a lot bigger. A goal with just under 30 seconds left in the third period. The Stars pull Jake Oettinger in a 6-on-5. The Stars down a goal, desperately needing to put one in the back of the net in order to try and force overtime to at least salvage a point in this all so important Central Division matchup. And Jason Robertson delivers. He is continuing his hot streak. He now is on a 12-game point streak, and it's not too far-fetched to say, I think there is no controversy here, that he is the hottest player in the National Hockey League right now, and undoubtedly the best scorer, best all-around, maybe not all-around, but best offensive player in the National Hockey League. I still think Roope Hintz is a better complete player as far as defensive styles go, but if you want to talk about pure goal scoring and just pure electricity, it is all number 21 right now. Again, on that 12-game point streak, and this is a guy that, I mean, he's getting a ton of love around the league. I think people are finally starting to recognize that this guy is legit. I mean, the only other player in the league right now who has more goals than him is Connor McDavid, and he only has 2 more than him. I mean, he's just at the top of every single statistical leaderboard. He's a guy that you have to, at this point, place in the Hart Trophy conversation, and a player that if he played in Montreal or Toronto, oh my goodness, can you imagine how much the national media would be drooling over themselves, drooling over Jason Robertson? It's, great that we have him here in Dallas, certainly not complaining about that at all, but I just feel like he's not going to get the credit and recognition across the league that he truly deserves because he plays in a quote-unquote non-hockey market, although the Dallas Stars currently lead their division and are having a fantastic season. But enough for me for a moment. Let's listen to the man himself, Jason Robertson, and hear what he had to say about his goal at the end of the game.
Yeah, I mean, I think we fought hard to that one point. I mean, we took a lot of penalties there, so whenever you can squeeze a point out, it's good. And, credit to our PK and Jakey to get us to a shootout, give us a chance, and we just lost the shootout.
What did you see there on your last goal?
Clock was ticking, just getting a puck to net. Had some space and just took it and got shot in net.
Of course, it would have been really cool to see Jason Robertson maybe get his third goal in overtime, finish the hat trick, and also get the Stars 2 points. Just not meant to be. That tends to happen when the Colorado Avalanche just play very safe and conservative and decide to not really do anything aggressive. Nathan MacKinnon just taking it in and out of the zone, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. You're one of the best players in the world. Try to go head-to-head with Jake Oettinger maybe more than once in overtime, just food for thought, even though Jake Oettinger did dominate Nathan MacKinnon in this matchup. But this isn't about Nathan MacKinnon. This is about Jason Robertson, the best scorer in the National Hockey League right now, a guy who should absolutely be in consideration for the Hart Trophy if the season ended today. And if he continues on this trajectory, I do believe that he will be in this conversation because his value to his team is absolutely immeasurable. I mean, you look at Connor McDavid, you look at the Edmonton Oilers, and they have two incredibly valuable players in McDavid and Draisaitl. I know those guys have been in the Hart conversation plenty of times in their career, but at this point, I feel like it's very difficult to give it to one of those guys when you can't give the award to both players. And so if you eliminate those guys from the equation, the next guy in line, I think, is Jason Robertson. And I think Robo is even ahead of Leon Draisaitl. So, I mean, I'm not saying he's a lock to win, and I'm not saying he's a guarantee. I think it would take a lot more for him to win, again, because this is not a hockey market here in Dallas. So Robo's going to have to continue to shatter expectations and break records. But what he's doing is nothing short of spectacular, and his teammates feel the exact same way. They're also incredibly impressed with what they've seen from Robo over this past 2-3 weeks from him. Let's hear from them now as well. Jake Oettinger and Miro Heiskanen on their teammate Jason Robertson.
It's great. I mean, it's not surprising. Obviously, the guys that are in here, know how good of a player he is, and he's a rink rat, and he wants to be the best scorer in the league, and pretty sure he is right now. So it's great to see him. We obviously need him to keep doing what he's doing. It's been great.
Yeah, it's great. He's a really important player for us and scoring important goals. So yeah, it's great to see that. How good is he doing?
Obviously, high praise from both those guys, really all three players that we talked to after the game. The cornerstone pieces of this franchise right now, and guys that hopefully will be here in Dallas for a long time and will be the backbone of a team that's looking to have several successful seasons in a row. And of course, Pete DeBoer, very complimentary of Jason as well. We'll hear a little bit more from him on some different subjects later on in the show. Well, we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we will talk about the not so good in this game. We'll talk about the penalties and how the Dallas Stars can avoid those and also manage their emotions about them right after this. Today's episode of Locked On Stars is brought to you by our friends at BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. You can get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from football to basketball to soccer and esports. They've got it all at BetOnline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. They are always the fastest and the easiest way to get your betting fix. If you want to do some betting over Thanksgiving, got plenty of NFL games lined up. You got the NBA, the NHL. College football is reaching the end of its season, but some of the best games of the year are on tap. If you want to bet any of those, you can do so at betonline.net. You can head to their website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action happening around the sports world. BetOnline.net is where the game starts. Moving on this Tuesday episode of Locked On Stars, thank you again for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. If you're watching on YouTube, to hit that subscribe button, and if you're listening on audio only, hit that follow button and leave us a 5-star rating or review if you do feel so inclined. It helps the show out a ton. Thank you guys for the continued support on this podcast. But let's now shift our attention. Jason Robertson has been great. He's been on an absolute tear, but the Achilles heel for the Dallas Stars this season continues to be penalties. And this was an incredibly frustrating game from a penalty standpoint, maybe the most infuriating that we've seen so far this season. And it really is, a two-headed monster, and one that the Stars are continuing to just rack up a ton of penalty minutes. Of course, the minute's going to look a little bit inflated after Monday night's game with a 10-minute game misconduct from Mason Marchment, one that I think he very much needed to air out his grievances, and rightfully so in that situation. Of course, you also throw in a 5-minute for fighting for Jamie Benn, and a fight that we're not going to talk about any farther because it did not necessarily go how it normally goes when number 14 gets into a fight. But I won't necessarily sit here before you and say that the Stars are being wrongfully accused for their penalties, because I do think if you look at all their penalties this season, I think for the majority of them, over 95% of these penalties are ones that should rightfully be called. If you get down to the letter of the law, and I'm not saying that all of them have been correct, I'm sure that there have been some. In fact, I know that there are some that should not have been called, that just in a bang, judgment moment, the referee decided to throw their arm up when they probably should have kept it down. But where I will get more upset and where I will air a little bit more of my grievances is on the other end of the ice, where there is a lack of calls against the opposition. And I think that was on full display on Monday night's game against the Avalanche. And of course, the NHL, we talked earlier about hockey markets and favoritism and things like that. Of course, the NHL wants to protect their precious child in the Stanley Cup champion Avalanche, but there were several instances where the referees could have very easily called some penalties against the Avs, and some of them, especially in the third period, in some pretty critical moments in the game, yet the arms stayed down, and yet nothing happened. I mean, the Stars only got one power play opportunity in this contest, as opposed to the Avalanche getting 6, and they go 1 for 6. They actually do convert on their first power play, and the Stars are pretty lucky and got to be thankful for a strong penalty kill and good performance from Jake Oettinger that they did not give up more goals on the man advantage, because the Avalanche spent quite a bit of time there in the game on Monday night, which was very, very frustrating to watch, and really just for the fact that the Stars were not getting, it seemed, equal opportunity. And we asked all the players and Coach DeBoer about this after the game. Here's what Pete DeBoer had to say about penalties and things of that nature after the game.
You have to. I mean, that's the game. So, I think our concentration has to be on us and our game and avoiding penalties, not the ones that aren't being called on the other end. I mean, you know what, we can't, bottom line is, you can't put yourself in that spot against anybody, but particularly players like that. They're going to get those calls.
We also asked defenseman Miro Heiskanen what can be done about the penalties as well, with him playing on the defensive side of the ice. Seemed like a very relevant question to him. Here are his thoughts on that.
I think we need to skate more. There's a lot of penalties in their zone, 200 feet from our net. So we have to skate more and play more body. We're just reaching too much right now and get stupid penalties.
And when there's penalties that sometimes get missed by officials or whatever, how do you guys kind of play through that emotion?
It's part of the game. You just have to keep doing your job and don't think about that too much. It's something we can't really take care of. It's a ref who made the calls, and we just need to keep doing our job.
I know it's very easy to get frustrated over the amount of penalties that the Stars have taken and the lack of penalties at the other end of the ice. But at the end of the day, the Stars have to focus on what they can control, which is the penalties that they do or do not choose to commit. And there is an aspect of you got to be careful with your stick. I mean, I think the Stars have a knack for trying to fight for the puck with their stick. And in those moments, it can lead to even just the slightest bit of contact. And whether or not it actually trips a player or the player is just aware that there's a stick on their skate and they choose to fall. I mean, you just got to put yourself in a smart position. You have to play disciplined, and you have to be very poised, and that's just part of hockey. And all the players, not just Miro, harped on that sometimes the game just goes that way. You're going to get unfairly officiated contests, and sometimes it's going to work in your favor, and sometimes it's just not. And this was a game on Monday night that did not work in the favor of the team in green, which was unfortunate, but the fact that the Stars still able to get a point out of that regardless is still very good, but very frustrating, and hopefully something that we can see the Stars fix. And I think it starts there. If the Stars can find ways to clean things up on their end, maybe you don't have to worry as much about the missed calls. Of course, referees are still going to make bad calls, and they're going to miss some that they should call as well. But if you're the Stars, you got to focus on what you can control, and that is discipline and putting yourselves in good positions in order to not get called for penalties. Well, we're going to take one more quick break, but when we come back, we will shift our attention to the Central Division as a whole because things are starting to get very spicy in this division. A lot of teams playing some good hockey right now. We talk about how the Stars can keep their position and keep pace with these other teams right after this. Today's episode of Locked On Stars is brought to you by Simply Safe. Did you know that over the holidays, property crimes like burglaries and package thefts spike nationally? That's why our friends at Simply Safe Home Security are offering 50% off their award-winning security system so that more families can feel safe and secure this holiday season. You can order your Simply Safe system today for half off and enjoy advanced security and greater peace of mind this holiday season. In an emergency, 24/7 professional monitoring agents use Fast Protect technology exclusively from Simply Safe to capture critical evidence and verify that the threat is real so you can get priority police response. Don't miss your chance to save big on the only security system that I would recommend. You can get 50% off any new Simply Safe system at simplysafe.com/lockedonnhl today. This is their biggest discount of the year, so don't wait. That's simplysafe.com/lockedonnhl. There's no safe like Simply Safe. Closing out today's episode of Locked On Stars, we now want to take some time to focus on this Central Division and the next week or so for the Stars. Very much involved in the standings and the circumstances going on in the Central Division. This next week is going to be a very critical one for the team as the Central Division, like I said before we went to break, is buzzing right now. A lot of teams playing some of their best hockey of the season, and some of the teams that started off very slow, Minnesota, St. Louis, Nashville, starting to pick things back up a little bit and starting to play a little bit better and starting to gain some ground in this division. And the Stars' next 6 games, 5 of those matchups are against Central Division opponents. Wednesday against the Chicago Blackhawks, Friday against the Winnipeg Jets, and then the very next day they go to Colorado for a date with the Avalanche. Then on November 28th, they're in St. Louis for a date with the Blues. Then they come back home on December 1st. They have a date with the Anaheim Ducks, not a division game, but then right after that on December 4th, they play the Minnesota Wild in the friendly confines of the American Airlines Center. So by the time this, the game on December 4th ends, the Stars will have played every team in the Central Division at least once, and they'll have played the Winnipeg Jets 3 times, and they'll have played Colorado twice. And so all of these games very important. Of course, that one against the Ducks important as well, but 5 of these games over the next 6 against Central Division teams, and I would say all but one of those are teams that very well could be in the playoff mix at the end of the season. I don't think the Chicago Blackhawks will be there, but I think based on how Winnipeg, Colorado, St. Louis, and Minnesota have been playing, it is not too far-fetched to believe that those teams will be fighting for playoff spots, and many, if not all of them with the Stars, could potentially lay claim to some of those spots. And so we talked to Pete DeBoer and all of the players, Miro, Robertson, and Oettinger, after the game about the importance of this next stretch of games for the Stars. So let's hear from them now. We'll hear from Pete DeBoer, Jake Oettinger, and Jason Robertson.
Well, it's critical, right? I mean, we talked to our group, every time you play one of these, it's a 4-pointer, and, you got to assume all these teams are going to be sticking around at the end, fighting for spots. So, critical points on the table. But, we're putting points in the bank. We're doing a lot of good things. And, we've got to concentrate on that, obviously clean up a couple things, but, there's a lot more good happening than bad.
Yeah, I mean, obviously these games are all huge. We have a huge week ahead of us, so if we can, do well this week, it'll be great for us down the road. So it's always, one of the toughest divisions in the league, and it's showing that again this year. So it's, it's no easy nights, and we have a huge week ahead of us.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Central's probably the hardest division. So, I mean, every team's winning, every team's tough. So, we got a big stretch of games coming here, a couple on the road. So, I think we need to cut down on our penalties because those Central teams will eat you alive.
Again, I can't stress enough how important it is that the Stars were able to salvage a point in Monday night's game. Every point matters all season long, but especially in divisional games. But you absolutely have to take care of business, especially in these next 2 games at home. I mean, the Chicago Blackhawks, we'll talk about them tomorrow, give you a full game preview. They certainly have good pieces, and they kind of had a good start to the season. But you look at the rosters, the Stars are far and away the superior team. You absolutely get 2 points in that game, and you get it in regulation. You do not allow the Blackhawks to get anything in that game. And then the Winnipeg Jets, that's going to be an intense, emotional game. Rick Bowness finally coming back to Dallas for the first time since his departure. You know that the Stars certainly have that in mind. The Winnipeg Jets going to want to continue to play hard, and these teams, whenever they get together, always physical, always intense, and of course going to be, after Thanksgiving as well. So going to be a test for some of the players, especially the American-born players celebrating American Thanksgiving, a test to make sure that their mind is in the right place. 2 big games coming up, and then right after that, you hit the road and you go to one of the toughest buildings to play in, both physically and mentally, in Ball Arena in Denver, where the air is thinner, but also a loud building against a good Colorado team that seems to be hitting its stride at the moment. And then the Blues also starting to finally catch back up after going on what I believe was an 8-game losing streak to start the season. They looked truly abysmal, but now they really seem to have turned things around. The Minnesota Wild, a very streaky and inconsistent team, but a team that certainly can deal some damage. So all of these games important, and all of them going to present their own set of challenges. And, these are teams in the Central Division from top to bottom that can beat you on any given night. Arizona may be the worst of the bunch, but we've seen them beat some good teams this season. Of course, the Stars aren't playing the Coyotes anytime soon, but this is a division that a lot of the guys said post-game that, all the teams are very good. It's one of the best divisions in the NHL, if not the best division in the NHL from top to bottom. And you got to take these games seriously. You got to battle and you got to fight to get any sort of points, but especially the home games. You got to get 2 points out of those, and you got to do it in regulation, because there very well could be 4 or 5 teams battling for playoff spots like last season. We had 5 Central teams make the playoffs last season, only 3 from the Pacific. I think we very well could see that scenario arise again if things continue on the trajectory that they're at right now. Some great teams all across this division, and a lot of them coming across the Stars schedule over the next week or so. But that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Stars. Thank you again for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. Remember to hit that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube, the follow button on your favorite podcasting platform, and follow us on social media at Locked On Stars on both Instagram and Twitter, as well as my personal Twitter account at Dane_Lewis. And be sure to tune back in to the show tomorrow, as we'll be giving you a full game preview of the Stars' first matchup of the season against the division rival Chicago Blackhawks. Should be an interesting game. A lot of interesting things going on in Chicago right now with the roster and even off the ice. Never a dull moment with this team as far as being a weird team to talk about and a weird team to play. But we'll cover it all on tomorrow's episode, give you a full preview of that matchup. And also, just putting it out there now, and we'll talk about this, I'll touch on it tomorrow. There will be no episode on Thursday. That is American Thanksgiving. So what will happen is I will watch the game on Wednesday. I'll actually be at the game on Wednesday night. I'll record an episode, and then I'll have it set to release on Friday. Give you a recap and a reaction of Wednesday's game, and then give you a quick preview of Friday's matchup against the Winnipeg Jets, and give you my thoughts on Rick Bowness's return to Dallas and how I personally think it should be handled. But we'll cross that bridge on tomorrow's episode. I hope to see you guys there, and hope you guys have a great Tuesday, Stars fans. We'll see you back here tomorrow.